Some thoughts about the Kates. Kates, the end of times. The purpose, the end to which everything is supposed to be tending. Everyone, not everyone, but a lot of times you hear people talking about when. When's the Kates? When's the Kates, right? Legalis as a Kates. We think legalis as a Kates means give a date, right? But I think much more interesting than when is the Kates is what is the Kates. Meaning the idea of a Kates is that there's some end, there's something towards which things are tending, something that we're aiming for. And it's very important to know what we're going towards. It's not just important, but if we can define the Kates, if we can articulate the Kates, if we can say, this is what the end is, this is what it looks like, then we're there. And what I mean to say is like this. I mean, you could maybe describe it, and we're not there. But usually, if you could just, when you talk about something that's not meaningful, right? If you talk about something, you describe something, and it doesn't mean anything to a person. You say, okay, it sounds very nice, but it's not real. It's not relevant. It's not something that they can think of in a practical way, right? So. Okay, so then they don't really understand it fully, or it's not relatable. If we can make the Kates, whatever the idea of the Kates is, whatever that end looks like, whatever its foundation is, whatever its character is, and what it's all about, if we can explain that and it makes sense to us, then we're there. When it makes sense to us, we'll act that way. If the Kates is about being a certain way, about thinking a certain way, about seeing things a certain way, then when we can do it, meaning when we can talk about it in a sensible, practical way, then we're basically there. And another way you could think of it like this, there's something called dechikas ha-kates. You're not going to be dechik the Kates, you can't press the Kates. So here's a way to think about it. Pressing the Kates means, if you have a vision of Kates, if you have an idea of what the Kates looks like, and you try to impose it on people and say, look, here it is, I know exactly what the good looks like, and we have to be doing it, etc., then it's not going to work. It's going to come with a lot of pain. It's going to come with a lot of trouble. You can't take a Kates and push it into something. You can't be deichik it. You can't try to squeeze it in somewhere where it doesn't belong. So you have to first be a Kates person, meaning you have to have a sense of Kates. What is the Kates? What does it look like? And then if people understand what you're saying, if you understand what you're saying, meaning if it's relatable, if it's meaningful, if it's actionable, that means that the Kates is here and you're right there, right? But if it's not actionable, that means there's a gap between you and this Kates, and then if you might want to try to squeeze it and pretend that the Kates is here on top of you when it's really far away from you. That's the dechikas ha-kates. Trying to push it somewhere where it really doesn't fit, doesn't belong. So that's why I think it's very important for us to think about the Kates. What does the Kates look like? What will we look like? What's the Kates like in here, in the mind? And then, we're getting towards it by knowing it. So I want to talk about one thing, just something I'm thinking about, which is, we say the pasuk, so the Mashiach will ascend the mountain of Tzion, judge Har Esav, and the Melucha will be Hashem. So if you think about it, let's reverse the engineer the pasuk. V'haisel Hashem HaMelucha, obviously is Kates, a description of Kates. The kingdom is Hashem's, and here's how to do it. Go up to Har Tzion and judge Har Esav. So I want to tell you what I think that means, and I want to bring this back to the point I'm making earlier, that to the extent that this makes sense to us, to the extent that we can do it and we understand it, then we are doing Kates, and we're bringing the Kates, not being deichik it, to the extent that we can, then we'll just try to be aware of this. Going up Har Tzion and judging Har Esav is the following. We have a Torah, we have ideas, we have Das Hashem, we have everything the Torah teaches us. And then there's everything else, sometimes called, of course, Elhim Acherim, the extreme, sometimes just plain minas of all sorts, of all flavors. And there's a battle of ideas. There's a battle of ideas. The battle of ideas plays out in the world, plays out in history. It's not difficult to see where things are going now in terms of the non-Torah ideas and how the world is, falling apart, or what's wrong with the non-Torah ideas. And the Mashiach who go up of Har Tzion and judge Har Esav are those who can be mis'alam, who can ascend conceptually to understand the teaching of the Torah, to understand the madregas aliyah called Har Tzion. And they have to turn around and judge Har Esav. Har Esav, of course, means the might, the lofty heights of Esav. And to judge Har Esav means to say, here, I have a perspective, I know, I could explain what's wrong with Har Esav and why. And I can show that what the Torah teaches will help us, will make it clear to us what the problems with Har Esav are. And not only that, but using the Torah, we can use the Torah to apply, to judge Har Esav and simply basically tell Har Esav, here's what's wrong with you, here's what you have to do. So that's lishbot as Har Esav. You have to use the Torah to judge Har Esav, to apply mishpat against them and call them out. So basically what it would look like is you take a certain idea, just any modern liberal idea, left-wing, whatever you want to call it, that's clearly anti-Torah, and show why it's not working or what's problematic about it. And then you go up to Har Tzion, which means you ascend and conceive and have a conception of the Torah's idea, and you show how the Torah is the judge of that, and how the Torah can demonstrate what's wrong with that. And that then the Haisel Hashem Hamlucha. That's how you create the Melucha of Hashem, by the judges. Of course, they have to be capable judges. Going up to Har Tzion, using the Hasaga called Har Tzion, and applying it to Har Esav and showing them, here, look, what's wrong with you? We can explain to you where you went wrong and how. And that's how you create what's called Malchus Hashem. Okay, so that's Lishbot as Har Esav. I have this dream of a newsletter or a publication. It even has a name, and it exists in my mind. Of course, it doesn't exist in reality. It's called Hadea. And the idea is that I would love to explore, have some means of exploring, how Das Hashem, Hadea, that's the name, the Dea, how that is supposed to inform our lives. What should we be doing, right? Central question is everyone's mind. Baruch Hashem, we have the luxury of asking the question of, to what should we dedicate our lives? What are we trying to achieve? Where are we going? And we should be thankful that we're able to ask that question. And what I would like this Hadea to do, this publication, to be able to show people, look, this is what Das Hashem looks like. Applied Das Hashem. Here's what it would mean for us. Here's what it would mean for what we should do this week, this month, this year. Here's what we should do as a nation. Here's what we should do as communities, etc. And I think about having like one column, the Lishbot as Har Esav column, where we can show how Torah ideas applied to Har Esav are the mishpat, the corrective, and the justice necessary to really bring things to light. Okay? And that's, as I said, that's how we create Haisel Hashem Hamlucha. So, is it Techikas HaKetz, or is it just knowing the Kates? Well, it depends. Depends if it makes sense. If it makes sense to people and we're holding by it, then it's the next step. It's the logical next step. If not, then we have to just be aware of this and think about it and recognize how beautiful it is, but don't try to bring it on before it's time. Right? That would be the Techikas HaKetz.